Ever dream of owning a piece of Dubai? Well, today we're diving into real estate crowdfunding with SmartCrowd, a platform that lets you do just that, starting with as little as AED 500. That's about 150 euros over for a potential piece of that booming market. We're taking a close look at a YouTube review from Real Talk Business to see if SmartCrowd really delivers.
It's a really interesting model, and this review is great because it really digs deep. So we'll be taking a look at its features, the fees, and most importantly, how it all fits into your own investment goals.
Speaking of which, one thing that really caught my eye in this review is how SmartCrowd presents properties. They have this really clean tile layout where you can immediately see all the key information like how much has been funded, the number of investors, even if a property is vacant or rented, all right there.
Yeah, it's all about making sure you have all the information. Imagine trying to compare investments where you've got to go through tons of documents for every single one. This layout just puts it all out there, makes it easier to assess the potential risks and rewards.
Exactly. You can quickly see if a property is generating rental income, if it's fully funded, which gives you an idea of its popularity with other investors. But what I found really interesting was SmartCrowd's transparency with their track record. They actually showcase their exited properties, meaning properties they've sold, along with the actual returns that investors received.
Now, that's something I always look for. Actual performance data. Now, remember, past performance isn't a guarantee of future results, but it does give you a tangible idea of how SmartCrowd has performed since they started in 2019. The review even highlights a property with a 29.2% annualized return.
Wow, 29.2%. Now, that definitely gets your attention. Obviously, those kinds of returns aren't going to be typical, but it does make you wonder about the possibilities.
Absolutely. And if you want to see how different investment amounts could play out, SmartCrowd actually has an investment calculator. You can plug in different scenarios and see the potential returns based on projected appreciation rates. And if you're ready to start your real estate journey, SmartCrowd has a direct link in the description below where you can open your account and begin investing with as little as AED 500.
It's really great that they offer these tools to help you visualize the potential outcomes. But before you jump in with your AED 500 or more, the review also breaks down SmartCrowd's exit strategies. Because, just like with any investment, you want to know how you can cash out when the time is right.
Yeah, and SmartCrowd actually gives you two main ways to, well, potentially exit your investment. The first is a vote to sell option. That happens at the end of the recommended 5-year holding period. So if a good offer comes along, investors can all decide together whether they want to sell or not.
So it's kind of like being part of a mini real estate group where everyone has a say in the decision.
Exactly. But what I think is really interesting about SmartCrowd is their second exit option, which is the share transfer facility. Now, this allows investors to buy and sell shares amongst themselves every 6 months in March and September.
Hold on. So even if I don't want to hold on to my investment for the full 5 years, I might be able to sell my shares to another investor sooner.
That's the idea, yeah. It adds that flexibility, that potential liquidity that you don't always find with traditional real estate or even some other crowdfunding platforms for that matter.
So that's pretty cool, especially for anyone who might need to access their money a little bit earlier than they initially planned. But I'm guessing there are fees involved when you buy and sell on SmartCrowd.
Of course. The review mentions a 1.5% upfront fee when you first buy your shares and then a 2.5% fee when you exit. Now, no one loves fees, of course, but it's really important to compare them across different platforms. And the review actually points out that SmartCrowd's fees are actually on the lower end compared to some competitors. Then there's also a 0.5% annual management fee, which is, pretty standard in the industry.
So it's important to factor those fees into your calculations when you're thinking about the potential returns. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just rewind for a second. We've talked about SmartCrowd's platform, their track record, how to exit an investment. But for someone who's completely new to this whole real estate crowdfunding thing, how does it actually work in practice?
That's a great question. So SmartCrowd, like many other real estate crowdfunding platforms, they use a structure called a special purpose vehicle, or SPV. Basically, think of an SPV like a company, and that company is created just to own a particular property.
Okay, so SmartCrowd finds a property, creates this SPV, and
Then you, the investor, you come in. And instead of buying the entire property yourself, you're buying shares of that SPV. So the amount of money you invest basically dictates how big of a share you own and therefore your potential returns.
so if that property generates rental income, I'm getting a portion of that income based on the size of my share.
Exactly. And if the property goes up in value and then it's sold later on for a profit, you would also receive a portion of those profits, again, based on how much you own.
Okay, starting to make sense now. But even with all of this, I imagine there are inherent risks with investing in real estate, even if you're doing it through a platform like SmartCrowd, right?
Oh, absolutely. While platforms like SmartCrowd, they try to make real estate investing more accessible, you still need to understand the potential downsides. Remember, even though you can start with as little as AED 500 through the link in the description below, you should always be aware of the risks involved.
Right. It's about understanding both sides of the coin, as they say. So let's talk about those risks. What should potential investors be aware of with SmartCrowd, or, frankly, any real estate crowdfunding platform?
I think the biggest one is liquidity, or should I say the lack of it.
Hmm.
Real estate, it's a long-term game, right? It's not like stocks where you can just, sell with a couple of clicks. Getting your money out of property, it takes time.
Hmm.
And even though SmartCrowd has that share transfer facility we talked about, you're not always guaranteed to find a buyer right away.
Of course, yeah. You're relying on other investors wanting those shares. So yeah, patience is key. Really reinforces the idea that this is not some get-rich-quick scheme.
Exactly, exactly. And speaking of getting rich quick, we can't forget about market volatility. Remember that 29.2% return we mentioned earlier? Well, that was under pretty specific market conditions. Real estate, it's cyclical. What goes up can definitely come down.
Yeah.
So it's all about setting realistic expectations.
Past performance is not indicative of future results, right?
Exactly.